Good day mga Gina and classmates. We are Group 1 and in our group we have Ma'am Marie Kasupang, Pastor Eleazar Atienza and myself. We will be engaging with the reading material Power Focus for a Biblical Theology by Hans Ruedi Weber. First question, describe the topic that is being addressed and whether this is a current social, pastoral, or personal issue. What biblical categories does the author use to be able to construct a biblical framework to respond to the issue? Our answer first. Our reading material has two sections. The first topic was all about the history of the Bible, its formation, canonization, and continuation. Weber discussed the trajectory of the Bible, the biblical development as a whole using a historical approach. Moreover, he sets the construction of the books in consecutive order from Old Testament to the canonization of the entire scripture. In another chapter, he discussed the theme of power. The decision to focus on this was occasioned by contemporary Christians' fight for social justice and social care, not so much as a key to biblical theology. He focused on the socio-political dimension of power, although he submits that all power comes from God. Thus, the biblical view of power centers on God's interacting with human, natural, and spiritual powers. The author used biblical history and constructing a biblical framework. Interesting this issue. He categorizes the topic in pre-monarchic times, monarchic times, exile, post-exile to the New Testament, and describe how the power of God gets out of hand beginning from the monarchic period and how the people put their trust in human diplomacy rather than God. Other biblical themes used include spirit, kingship, messiahship, among others. Question number 2. Analyze and discuss the methodology that the author uses. The author may have used one or more. Discuss each one respectively. Is the author using a historical, literary, sociological, canonical, etc. approach? How are the texts selected and grouped together? Is there a critical principle being used to evaluate which text should be given a greater weight over the others? How are the texts organized into a coherent arrangement? Answer, in tracing the theme of power, Weber proposes 6 biblical trajectories or traditions of faith that describe the various interplay of God's power with other powers. But underlying these trajectories is the assumption that biblical history and contextual history, present-day history, go hand in hand together. The author used a sociological approach in tracing the various aspects of power struggle in history. Texts that pertain to different facets of power struggle are selected and then grouped together according to the 6 biblical categories of faith. The choice is conditioned by the focus on the theme of power. In addition, Weber also used historical approach. Weber divided the section of theme in a historical framework from earlier to latter. Then in that historical time frame, he traces the theme and compares it to other contemporary and discuss if there are changes, developments, similarities of elements. For example, regarding God's power or rule in Davidic kingship. Those with related phrases or concept related to Davidic kingship were used as reference to develop his argument. Moreover, apart from categorization using historical approach, he also used biblical books with the same literary genre. He gives voice to the contemporary material and after incorporating ideas from different authors, He discussed the uniformity and diversity of the message. Moreover, he used historical evidence to back up and develop his argument. And question number 3, give the strength and weaknesses of methodologies or methodology in relation to the given topic or theme. How successful are the approaches used in illuminating the subject matter from a biblical perspective? Our answer in relation to strengths. Weber's approach has several strengths because he approached the subject from a historical viewpoint. The reader can easily track or follow the development of the theme, seeing as it were the big picture that forms resulting from the process. Thus, the student will not easily lose track because he is guided to classify, analyze, simplify, or conceptualize each episode related to the historical development of the theme. And because the method requires that historical period be examined in its own right as it relates to the theme, there is also a little room for anachronism, which would have resulted faulty circular methodology otherwise. Theologically, this approach also enables to highlight the unifying or the underlying power of God that is at work in all history. This then engenders a belief in the unity of the OT and NT, despite their varied differences at work through them in the same God. And this work reaches its apex in the work and person of Jesus Christ. In relation to weaknesses, the weakness may not necessarily be with the method, more than how Weber used it. Weber's scope in discussing power is very limited. His study on the theme of power, as it is shown only in the Old Testament kingship and in the kingship of Jesus, may only be a starting point, rather than a solid foundation for a biblical theology of power. Certainly, power is vested in kingship as it is in the kingship of Christ. But the power does not only reside in kingship. There are other authority figures who embody power in the Old Testament, such as prophet, priest, sages, and in the New Testament, apostles, bishop, etc. Another aspect of power may have been included in the study is the role of women. How women held leadership roles in the society. Because power and its attendant concept of dominion and subjugation is a complex issue. Present-day advocates for social justice may find the model somewhat lacking. In the work of Stephen Lukes, he presented a third dimension of power that is often ignored and unnoticed, but whose impact is far more insidious and amorphous. It is the realm of the consciousness. His most revealing findings are the oppressed do not always desire freedom, a psychological acceptance and resignation to their fate that no amount of education nor help can break down, nor the helpless situation necessarily entail their weakness. Covertly, the oppressed are subverting the dominion of their overlords, though through little acts or superstitious acts of rebellion like boundary chokes, folk songs, graffiti, etc. How do we then preach biblical freedom to people who never wanted out of their prison cell? Which of 6 trajectories can account for this phenomenon? And question number 4, last question. Share your insights in relation to the methodology of the content of the work. What points are helpful to you in terms of how you go about doing biblical theology? Ma'am Marie, answer What I gleaned from this methodology is that you have a focus, and from this focus, you collect biblical data that pertain to such subject. Establish the connection between your OT and NT text, and then correlate it with your own personal context. This would be helpful in giving us the big picture of our task. Nonetheless, the details that form criticism can supply us would help us secure our foundation, and from there we can use this broader picture approach of Weber. Pastor Eleazar answer, I think that Weber's historical approach to the theme of power effectively explained the diversity of understanding the theme in Scripture. If I will do anything to improve this method, I'll deal more with specific texts, not simply cite them or gloss them over as Weber did. And I'll expand my scope to include other related areas for a wider perspective. And last, my personal answer. I appreciate the use of historical methodology. It is easy for me to follow the discussion. I can say it helps me to classify the events and picture out the development in history, for example, the formation and canonization of the scripture. I benefit from the historical approach, especially how he argues how he argues the theme with contemporary materials, and how he links it to the latter times. I have a theme that requires me to study from the Old Testament to the New Testament, so I take note how he used the historical approach and literary approach. So while there is room for improvement, as with any analysis, there is much to learn from Weber's choice of method in exploring the theme of power and scripture. So that's all for our group, and thank you, and God bless.